I have Stan Taylor on the line with me. Stan now lives in Florida. He grew up in Decatur, went to MacArthur High School, got a job as a mail carrier. This was back in 1963 or so, Vietnam War. And Stan Taylor, carrying mail, delivered his own draft notice. Uncle Sam, the Selective Service Office sent him a letter. He delivered his own draft notice. Went to Vietnam. And he was with me. After Vietnam, he came back to Decatur, got his old job back as a mail carrier. For 41 years, delivered mail in Decatur, and maybe delivered mail to your house. Now retired. And you spend your time, you work part-time somewhere.
I sure do, and I love it. I'm the type of person that I basically just can't be retired. I worked over 41 years, almost 42 years at the post office, and I worked for the Herald and Review for 33 years, and I always had a part-time job. I came down here, I tried reading books for about 6 months, and that didn't pan out so well, so I got a job with a marketing firm working for a different retailer, but they are subcontracted, and we reset all the items in the shelves and make them so. When did you
write this book, Stan? The title of the book is Beneath the Bamboo, a Vietnam War story. When did you write this?
It was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I had no intention in writing it. I went to the VA clinic and was getting blood work done and so forth, and I was telling my doctor, he told me he wanted to hear a little bit about me, and I told him, and he assigned me to a caseworker. This caseworker, she took it under her wings and said, "You got to fly with this. You got to tell people your story." And I told her, I said, "I'm just not interested. It's not me. I don't feel that it's anybody's business." And then she mentioned, "Well, maybe your sons would like to hear something about it. Have you ever told them?" I said, "No." I said, "I don't know if they'd be interested or not." So when I came home, I kind of flew it by my youngest son, and he said, "Oh, I would love to help you write this." He's got a master's degree in library science, so he knows what he's doing. And he said, "You just sit down and write the stories, and I'll put in all the periods and question marks and quotations, and that's basically how it started."
Stan, let me read a part of the editor's note from the front of this book, and I have read the entire book, by the way. It says, "Unlike a lot of books available on the Vietnam War, this was not written by someone who has been reading war stories since the war happened, not written by a historian or someone still mentally immersed in their own past in Vietnam who has kept every last detail in their minds present. This is a memoir based on the memories of a late teen caught up in one moment in time who just did his job and got out of there and hasn't looked back until recently." And that he just is. Did you write that, or did one of your sons write that?
My youngest son wrote that.
And that
he wrote that. He knew that I didn't want any part of Vietnam anymore, and all of a sudden in the last few years he just started coming back, and it's hurt. But I've tried to keep the hurt inside of me. I didn't want my family burdened. I didn't want anybody to know. Even in the past years, I had a best friend, and I never said a word to him.
He didn't know.
He might have known. I don't know, but he's an amazing man as well.
Now, you went to Vietnam when?
67, 68.
67, you went over there. Okay. Now, the title of your book is Beneath the Bamboo, a Vietnam War Story.
Correct.
What is this beneath? Would you tell me where this Beneath the Bamboo title comes from?
I thought of this because there's so much bamboo, and you're just in a pure jungle over there if you're in the infantry. It's just nothing but chaotic. It's a chaotic time, and when you're walking, you see nothing but bamboo practically, and huge banana leaves, and so my son says, "You got to write something about being underground. You got to make that the title." And I said, "Well, under the bamboo." And then I go, "Well, I think it'd sound better if it would be beneath the bamboo." So
But
this is where I got my title.
let's explain that, though. This under the bamboo or beneath the bamboo.
It was just kind of a little bit more catchy, I thought.
Well, no. Let's explain it.
Well,
You fought. You went down the spider holes into the tunnels. Nobody would do that.
nobody would do that, and nobody wanted me to do that. I had two friends that took me under their wing, and they kept saying, "No, you're not going to go." But let me tell you something. I was brought up underneath a first sergeant in the Army, who was my stepfather. Just strictly military, all discipline. And at first I thought, in my younger years, I thought he was just mean and vicious. And then I found out he was just rearing me up to be his little soldier, to make a man out of me, to do things in life that I could handle any circumstance. Well, I had pulled point over there in Vietnam. And pulling point is going anywhere between 20 and 100 yards in front of your company, kind of a lookout man. But our company, we had a no-holds-barred, and we were basically free to roam as far as we wanted to go. It wasn't protocol, basically. So I did that for a while. Then one day we were walking through a village, and these two mom and sons, they were just yakking and yakking. And we had a kid, Carson, who was an interpreter for us. He was a South Vietnamese boy, and his parents had got killed by the Viet Cong. And he worked with our company as an interpreter. And he went up to these two ladies because they were yelling at him, and found out that their two daughters generally go down to this one tunnel and play for about an hour, where they were gone for about 3 hours, and they were scared to death. And company commander said, "Well, it's not my problem." And he says, "Anybody want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll go." And, of course, everybody said, "No, you don't want to go down those tunnels." Well, I went down, and I couldn't get my M16 down there as being able to be flexible.
Yeah, that was your rifle.
Yes, that's my rifle.
Yeah.
So the first sergeant gave me his 45 and a flashlight. He said, "Have at it." So I went down there, and when I first saw them two little girls, they were scared to death. But then I comforted them and showed them that it was okay, and I let them back out. And that basically started it all. And then curiosity got the best of me of what else is down here. What else is down here? And I had no fear at the particular time. When you're 19, you can almost do anything you want, and without fear. But I was brought up that way. Like I say, I was brought up under a military regime, basically, and it was an everyday affair. So, but not everybody has that, or it's not courage. People say, "You were so brave." Well, bravery and stupidity, there's a thin line between that. I think I crossed that line many times. It just, I was actually lucky. I encountered several.
Your book is very graphic, and you tell the details of those people that you encountered and the results of your encounter. And I don't want to get too graphic here, and I suspect you don't either. But it is true that revolver came in handy for you several times and saved your life.
Many times. And I was a whiz on putting that thing back together and taking it apart, because it had to be clean, because I didn't want it to jam.
And
we were always cleaning our weapons because of the sand and stuff that could get into the chambers.
And those tunnels were numerous in Vietnam.
There was many of them. They held basically armies of South Vietnamese. They were just full of people. And that's where they went. They were so used to going underground, stay away from the bombers and the napalm and the helicopters.
So when you would go into these tunnels, you would encounter the North Vietnamese.
That's only when I got up to Dong Ha. The Viet Cong are sympathizers with the North Vietnamese, and there were many of them. And this is when I first went in to the Central Highlands, was in An Khe, and I encountered a few there, but most of the time it was the North Vietnamese, which are a better fighting army.
and in those places where no one else would go. And the final time you went down into the tunnel, your last time, what happened?
This is tough. This is really tough. Because I see this man's face every day, every single day.
Still?
I went down, and I always had the advantage. They never thought that anybody would come down there. Mm-hmm. No American. They never gave it not a thought in their mind that someone would do that. So I always had the advantage of surprise. Mm-hmm. And that's where I always ended up winning. But this one particular last time, and I'd already encountered 8. This was number 9. I was shooting for 10, and I was going to quit. And I went down, and I saw this light, and I thought I had it in control. Now, I only turn on my flashlight about 2 seconds at a time. At about every 45 seconds to a minute, I'll turn it on because there was a lot of twisting and bends in a lot of these tunnels. And I saw the light, and I went after him, and I charged too fast, and nothing was there. There wasn't anything there. And I turned around, and he had his AK-47 right on my forehead, and he pulled the trigger, and it didn't go off. And he was mine. And I came out there just shaking, and I told Top, our first sergeant, I said, I'll never do that again, ever. And that was the end of my career as a tunnel rat.
So he pulled the trigger with the barrel of his...
barrel was on my forehead.
On your forehead. He pulled the trigger, but his gun misfired, and that gave you the opportunity to use your weapon to save your life.
Correct.
What a story, Stan. And you still see his face every day.
Every day. I see almost every one of their faces every day.
After you got home, how many years were you home before you told that story to anyone?
It's been 50 years. It's just when I started the book.
Beneath the Bamboo, a Vietnam War story by Stan Taylor is the book. How can one get a copy of this book?
Through Amazon.com. I think I wrote this 4 or 5 years ago, and at a particular time, it went to number 1 seller in its category. Not the number 1 seller of all books, but in its category. It's just a true story.
This is, nonfiction book, and it is just an amazing read. You won't put it down. Stan, so good to talk to you this morning. Thank you for taking time. You delivered mail in Decatur, north side of Decatur most of the time, for 41 and a half years or so. Now retired, and this is a story, your own story, Beneath the Bamboo, a Vietnam War story. Amazon.
May I say something, Orv?
Yes, please do.
Veterans Day is coming up.
Yes.
Down here in Florida, the weather's a lot warmer, and we see a lot of homeless veterans. And through no fault of their own, they're combat weary. A lot of them, or most of them that are homeless, are combat weary. I've seen them sleeping in cardboard boxes, newspapers covered over them. I've seen them standing by dumpsters at grocery stores. These guys are hurting. They're in a sorry state of mind, and they can't help themselves. If by any chance you ever see one, don't be afraid of him. He's not there to hurt you. Maybe slip him a 10 or a 20 so he can get some food, some decent food. It's a shame. It's so sad that veterans live like this, but then illegal, and I stress the word illegal, immigrants get housing and food and a monthly paycheck. It's just not right. Something's wrong with the system. But just don't feel sorry for these veterans, and don't give them pity. Just help them a little bit, because they got a lot of pride.
Stan Taylor.
And thank you for having me on, sir.
Stan, it's a It's a pleasure to have you, an honor to have you. Thank you very much, and thank you for what you've done for our country.